In the vast and anonymous world of Craigslist, a simple click can change your life forever. Tonight, we uncover 3 harrowing tales that reveal the dark side of online interactions. Story 1. The Roommate. Brian Boucher was desperate for a roommate. The rent for his apartment in New York was becoming unmanageable, and the quickest solution seemed to be Craigslist. After posting an ad, he received a response from a man named John Williams. John seemed polite and straightforward, and after a brief meeting, Brian decided he was a suitable candidate. They made arrangements, and soon John moved in, taking the only bedroom in the apartment. At first, things were normal. John kept to himself, which Brian appreciated since he valued his privacy too. However, as days turned into weeks, Brian began to notice peculiarities. John would spend hours in his room, often not emerging until late at night. When he did come out, it was with his head down, muttering to himself, before quickly retreating back into his locked sanctuary. The atmosphere in the apartment grew heavy with an unspoken tension. Brian's unease escalated each time he heard the soft click of John's bedroom door locking behind him. The man's odd behavior gnawed at Brian's nerves, creating a persistent sense of dread. John's absences became frequent and prolonged. Sometimes he would be gone for days. This only added to Brian's anxiety. One evening after John had been missing for almost a week, Brian decided he had had enough. The fear and paranoia that had been building inside him reached a tipping point. He resolved to investigate John's room and find out what was going on. With trembling hands, Brian picked the lock on John's door. The room was dark and musty, filled with an unsettling stillness. As his eyes adjusted to the gloom, he spotted a bulging manila envelope on the bed. Curiosity and fear battled within him as he reached for it. What he found inside turned his blood to ice. The envelope was filled with pieces of his life, meticulously gathered and documented. There were torn-up credit card offers with his name, detailed notes about his daily routine, and even personal information about his family, including their names and addresses. Among these, he found a sheet of notebook paper covered in his own passwords and account details. His entire private life had been compiled and scrutinized by his roommate. His heart raced as he discovered a diary at the bottom of the envelope. Flipping through it, he found disturbing entries detailing John's thoughts. The final entry was particularly chilling. "I'm only now just starting to get over being afraid every time someone looks at me, twice in the street. Every time a cop looks at me, thinking they know." In a panic, Brian ran to his computer and searched John's real name, using some of the clues he had pieced together from the diary. What he found left him in a state of shock and terror. John Williams was an alias. His real name was Dino Lawrence Smith, a notorious criminal who had pulled off a $10 million diamond heist in San Francisco. He was listed on America's Most Wanted, and the police had been searching for him for months. Brian's hands shook as he dialed 911, barely able to convey the urgency of his discovery. When the police arrived, they informed him that Dino was already in custody. He had been arrested earlier that week for an unrelated crime. Brian was relieved, but remained haunted by the thought of what might have happened if Dino had not been apprehended. The police took the envelope as evidence, and Brian was left to process the chilling reality of his situation. He had lived with a dangerous criminal, oblivious to the peril lurking behind his roommate's locked door. The incident left a permanent scar on his psyche, a reminder of how a simple Craigslist ad had brought him to the brink of a nightmare. This experience changed Brian's life forever. The memory of Dino's quiet footsteps and the soft click of his door still echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the thin line between normalcy and terror. Story 2: A Craigslist Encounter. Katherine Ann Olson was filled with anticipation as she prepared for a new nanny job she found on Craigslist. Fresh out of St. Olaf College, where she studied theater and Hispanic studies, Katherine was eager to gain more experience while searching for her big break in the arts. She had used Craigslist before to find jobs, even securing a position in Turkey, so she felt confident as she responded to an ad posted by Amy, a mother in need of childcare services. However, Katherine couldn't shake a lingering unease about the arrangement. Despite the odd feeling, she decided to go through with the meeting. On the morning of October 25th, 2007, Katherine set off for the suburban home in Savage, Minnesota. The house looked ordinary enough, nestled quietly in a typical neighborhood. As she approached, the chill of the fall air heightened her sense of foreboding. She knocked on the door, and it was opened by a young man who introduced himself as Michael. He explained that his wife, Amy, was running late, but insisted that they could start the interview. Katherine followed him inside, the house eerily quiet, save for the creaking of the floorboards underfoot. Michael led her up a narrow staircase to a room at the end of the hall. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and something metallic. The room itself was sparsely furnished, just a bed and a small dresser. Katherine tried to make small talk to ease the growing tension, but Michael's responses were curt and unsettling. Suddenly, the situation turned dire. Michael produced a .357 Magnum, and with no warning or provocation, shot Katherine in the back. The force of the shot threw her forward, and she collapsed onto the cold, hard floor. Pain seared through her body, and her vision blurred as she tried to comprehend the reality of what had just happened. In a state of panic, Michael dragged Katherine's lifeless body down the stairs, leaving a trail of blood that smeared the once clean steps. He shoved her into the trunk of her car, his actions frantic yet methodical. He then drove to a nearby nature preserve and abandoned the vehicle, hoping to delay the discovery of his horrific crime. The next day, Katherine's car was found, the gruesome scene inside revealing her tragic fate. The investigation quickly led to Michael John Anderson, who had orchestrated the entire plot under the guise of needing a nanny, solely to fulfill his dark desire to experience what it felt like to kill someone. As the police delved deeper into the case, they uncovered a chilling truth. Michael, only 19 years old, had a history of troubling behavior and was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome. However, the court ruled that his condition did not excuse his actions. In April 2009, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial and conviction brought a sense of closure to Katherine's grieving family, but the pain of their loss was a permanent scar. Her parents, Rolf and Nancy Olson, chose to remember Katherine not for the way she was taken from them, but for the joy and light she brought into their lives and those of others. They started a scholarship fund in her name and continued to share her story, hoping to inspire others and keep her memory alive. Katherine's tragic end was a stark reminder of the dangers that can lurk behind seemingly innocent online interactions. Her story serves as a cautionary tale, a testament to the importance of trust and vigilance in the digital age. The emptiness left by her absence was a void filled with memories, love, and the enduring hope that her legacy would continue to inspire goodness and light in a world that could often be dark and unpredictable. Story 3: A Shallow Grave. Jennifer Papain's life took a tragic turn on a seemingly ordinary night in March 2010. She was 26, working as a prostitute in Long Island, and had agreed to meet a client named Chad Johnson through a Craigslist ad. Little did she know, this would be her last night alive. Jennifer had met Chad in a small, dimly lit parking lot of a church in Bay Shore. The atmosphere was tense and quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every little sound. As she got into Chad's car, she couldn't shake an uneasy feeling, but she pushed it aside. This was just another job, she told herself, nothing to worry about. The drive was short, but felt interminable. They headed towards Patchogue, to a house Chad's mother used to live in before she was incarcerated. As they neared the house, Chad saw his brother outside, chatting with a friend. Panic set in, and he sped up, hoping to avoid being seen. Inside the car, Jennifer was unaware of the storm brewing in Chad's mind. In the confines of the car, a confrontation broke out. Chad demanded a refund of the $1.80 he had paid her, but Jennifer refused. The argument escalated quickly, the air growing thicker with hostility. In a sudden fit of rage, Chad reached out and began to strangle Jennifer. The struggle was brief, but violent. Her life was extinguished in a matter of minutes, leaving Chad with a lifeless body and a horrifying realization of what he had done. Panicking, Chad drove with Jennifer's body to a secluded spot near the Long Island Expressway. The darkness of the night wrapped around him like a cloak, offering temporary cover. He hastily dug a shallow grave just deep enough to conceal her body and buried her there. The crude, makeshift grave was marked only by the disturbed earth and a few scattered leaves. For 2 agonizing months, Jennifer's family and friends were left in the dark about her whereabouts. The police investigation eventually led to Chad, who, under intense interrogation, confessed to the murder and led detectives to the grave. The sight was harrowing. A shallow hole, barely covered, with Jennifer's toes peeking out from the dirt and leaves. Long Island Press. Long Island Press. During the trial, Chad's defense argued that Jennifer had died of a drug overdose and that he had panicked, leading to the disposal of her body. However, the prosecution painted a different picture, one of premeditated murder driven by a volatile temper. The jury found Chad guilty of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. Long Island Press. The case left a lasting impact on the community, a stark reminder of the dangers lurking behind the anonymity of online interactions. Jennifer's story, along with those of other victims found near Gilgo Beach, underscored the vulnerability of those who engage in high-risk professions facilitated by the internet. Jennifer Papain's tragic end serves as a haunting tale of trust misplaced and the dark side of human nature. The shallow grave beside the highway stands as a silent testament to the horror she endured, a reminder to always be wary of the seemingly mundane interactions that can spiral into nightmare scenarios. The marks left by homicide detectives on the trees near her burial site, once bright pink, now fade slowly, but the memory of her ordeal continues to linger, unsettling and deeply disturbing.